And entitled, Karen wrapped her hands around a royal guard's neck. Seconds later, she realized she'd made the worst mistake of her life. Here's what happened. But before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Also, make sure to check out our second channel, Guard Patrol, linked in the pinned comments, because we upload daily at the same time on both channels. So subscribe to both and never miss a powerful story. The summer sun beat down on the cobblestones of Windsor Castle's outer ward, turning the ancient stones into heat-radiating platforms that had tourists fanning themselves with maps and guidebooks. Despite the sweltering afternoon, Guard Sergeant James Winters stood perfectly still at his post, the heavy bearskin cap and scarlet tunic, seemingly no burden to his disciplined bearing. At 32, Winters was no ceremonial soldier playing dress-up. His measured gaze had once scanned Afghan mountain passes for threats, his hands, now gripping a ceremonial rifle with parade ground precision, had once pulled wounded comrades to safety under heavy fire. The two medals pinned discreetly to his chest told a story of valour that most passing tourists never bothered to read. Today was like any other day of duty. A kaleidoscope of camera flashes, curious children, and respectful observers. Tourists from across the globe gathered in the courtyard, their excited chatter creating a backdrop of white noise that Winters had long ago learned to filter out. Most visitors maintained a respectful distance, content to admire the living symbol of Britain's historical traditions from afar. But as the afternoon crowd shifted, a woman's voice cut through the pleasant murmur, sharp as breaking glass. "Excuse me, some of us have places to be." The sea of tourists parted reluctantly as Patricia Holloway carved her path through the crowd, designer sunglasses perched atop her meticulously highlighted hair. Her expensive blouse, despite the quality of its fabric, was darkened with sweat patches as she pushed forward, trailing complaints like breadcrumbs. "This heat is absolutely unacceptable. Don't they know who's paying their salaries?" Winters didn't move a muscle, his gaze fixed forward as it had been for the past 3 hours of his shift. But something in the air changed, the subtle tightening of atmosphere that experienced soldiers recognize as the prelude to trouble. Patricia Holloway's path through the crowd ended directly in front of Guard Sergeant Winters, her leather handbag swinging dangerously close to his polished boots. "You there?" she addressed him, as though speaking to a waiter who had brought the wrong order. "I need directions to the state apartments, and I need them now. We've been walking in circles for 20 minutes. Winters remained motionless, his discipline holding firm against the direct address. His training was clear: maintain position, eyes forward, no engagement with the public unless there was a genuine security threat. "Hello? Are you deaf?" Patricia snapped her manicured fingers inches from his face. "I know you people can talk when you need to. I'm a taxpayer, and I'm asking you a simple question." Her voice carried across the courtyard, causing several nearby tourists to turn and stare. A mother gently guided her children away from the unfolding scene. From the edge of the gathering crowd, a man in his 60s watched with the calculated assessment of someone familiar with public confrontations. Martin Davies, a retired Metropolitan Police Inspector with 30 years of service, recognized the warning signs of a situation about to escalate. His trained eye noted the guard's perfect composure, even as Patricia's behavior became increasingly provocative. "Look at him, just standing there," Patricia announced to the onlookers, her voice rising with each word. "What exactly are we paying for? Decorations?" She turned back to Winters, whose expression remained impassive. "Is this really your job, standing around like a mannequin while visitors get lost?" A young American couple exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Ma'am," the husband ventured cautiously, "there are information guides over there who can help you." He gestured toward a uniformed castle staff member standing near an entrance. "I don't need your help," Patricia shot back without looking at him. "I need this so-called guard to do his job." She stepped even closer to Winters, deliberately invading the invisible boundary that most visitors instinctively respected. The scent of her expensive perfume, mixed with the sweat of her exertion, created a cloying cloud around her. "Do you even speak English? Or are you just hired for your ability to stand still and look pretty?" Davies shifted his position slightly, moving to where he could better observe both the guard and the increasingly belligerent woman. His years of experience with public disturbances had taught him to recognize the dangerous convergence of entitlement and anger. He watched as Patricia's hands began to gesture more dramatically, her designer bracelet catching the afternoon sun with each aggressive movement. "This is ridiculous," she declared, pulling out her phone. "I want to speak to whoever's in charge of these toy soldiers. There should be someone useful standing here, not just decoration." Throughout it all, Winters remained a study in military discipline, his eyes fixed on a point in the distance, his posture unchanged since the beginning of his shift. But behind that mask of ceremonial stillness, years of combat experience had his senses on high alert, cataloguing the escalating threat with professional detachment. "You know what I think?" Patricia's voice grew louder, clearly playing to the reluctant audience gathering around her. "I think this whole guard thing is just an elaborate con to get tourist money. They're not real soldiers, they're just actors hired to stand around in these ridiculous costumes." A few feet away, Davies saw a castle attendant speaking quietly into a radio, no doubt alerting security to the developing situation. Good, he thought, they're aware. But the retired police inspector knew from experience how quickly situations like this could escalate before help arrived. Patricia circled Winters like a predator, her designer heels clicking against the ancient cobblestones. "Look at this hat," she sneered, gesturing at the guard's bearskin cap. "What century do they think this is? And that gun! I bet it's not even real." The contempt in her voice was palpable, each word designed to provoke a reaction. An elderly Japanese tourist lowered his camera, his face troubled as he turned to his wife and whispered something in her ear. They moved away from the scene, the woman shaking her head in apparent disapproval. One by one, families with children began to drift to the edges of the courtyard, parents clearly uncomfortable with the spectacle unfolding before them. "Ma'am?" A young woman in a university sweatshirt stepped forward hesitantly. "These guards are actual soldiers. They—" "Mind your own business," Patricia snapped, not even bothering to turn around. "If he's a real soldier, let him prove it by doing something other than standing there like an idiot." She moved even closer to Winters, her face inches from his, her voice dropping to a taunting whisper that nevertheless carried in the tense silence that had fallen over the immediate area. "What's wrong, soldier boy? Cat got your tongue? Or are you just trained to follow orders like a good little puppet?" Davies watched as Patricia's body language became increasingly aggressive, the tightening of her shoulders, the forward lean of her posture, the way her hands kept clenching and unclenching. Classic pre-assault indicators he recognized from his years on the force. His hand moved instinctively toward the pocket where his warrant card used to be before he remembered he was retired now, just another tourist without authority. "You people think you're so special with your fancy uniforms and your precious traditions," Patricia continued, her voice taking on an ugly edge. "But you're nothing. Just a relic from a time that's long gone, a joke that nobody finds funny anymore." She turned to address the crowd directly now, arms spread wide in theatrical indignation. "Don't you all see it? We're standing here in the heat, paying outrageous ticket prices to look at this mannequin." A teenager who had been filming the incident slowly lowered his phone, discomfort evident on his face. Davies caught his eye and gave a small shake of his head. "Don't encourage her," the gesture said. The boy nodded slightly in understanding and stepped back into the crowd. Patricia, increasingly frustrated by her failure to elicit a response from Winters or genuine support from the onlookers, turned back to the guard with renewed determination. Her voice dropped to a dangerous purr, the kind that experienced officers like Davies instantly recognized as the calm before the storm. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" she hissed, her face flushed with more than just the summer heat. "Standing there all high and mighty, like you're something special. Well, I've got news for you, soldier. You're nothing. You exist to serve people like me. Your salary comes from my pocket, and I think it's time you earned it. Patricia's shadow fell across Winter's immaculate uniform as she planted herself directly in his path, deliberately blocking his line of sight. The afternoon sun cast her silhouette across his polished buttons, a temporary stain on the perfect scarlet tunic. The courtyard had grown unnaturally quiet, the typical cheerful murmur of tourists replaced by the tense silence of witnesses to an impending disaster. "I demand that you acknowledge me," Patricia's voice had taken on a shrill edge that experienced security personnel recognize as the precursor to physical confrontation. "Do you understand? I pay your wages. My taxes keep this whole charade running, and you will show me the respect I deserve." Davies had begun moving forward through the crowd with the practiced ease of someone who had broken up countless public disturbances. His retirement hadn't dulled his instincts. Patricia's body language was setting off every alarm bell from his 3 decades of police work. The tightened jaw, the forward-leaning stance, the hands that couldn't stay still, all classic indicators of someone about to cross the line from verbal to physical assault. "Ma'am," he called out, his voice still carrying the natural authority of his former position. "Perhaps we should—" "Stay out of this!" Patricia snarled, without turning around, her attention fixed entirely on Winters. "This is between me and this toy soldier." Her handbag slipped from her shoulder, landing on the cobblestones with a thud that seemed to punctuate her rising anger. Winters remained motionless, his training holding firm. But those who looked closely, as Davies did, might have noticed the subtle change in his eyes, the slight tightening around his mouth. Not fear, but the heightened awareness of a combat veteran recognizing a threat assessment in progress. "You think you're so superior, don't you?" Patricia's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper as she leaned in even closer. "Standing here in your costume, looking down on all of us regular people. What makes you special? What gives you the right to ignore me?" A child's voice broke the tension momentarily. "Mummy, why is that lady being mean to the guard?" before being quickly hushed and guided away. The movement seemed to further agitate Patricia, whose breathing had become audibly laboured, her designer blouse rising and falling with each aggressive inhalation. "This is public property," she continued, her finger now jabbing the air inches from Winter's chest. "I have every right to be here, and you have an obligation to assist visitors. It's literally your only job." Each word was enunciated with venomous precision, spittle flying from her lips as she worked herself into a righteous fury. Davies was only feet away now, close enough to see the slight whitening of Winters's knuckles on his ceremonial rifle, the only outward sign that the guard was registering the escalating threat before him. The retired inspector opened his mouth to intervene again, but Patricia's next move happened too quickly for anyone to prevent. "Look at me when I'm talking to you," she shrieked, her hand suddenly shooting out to grab the front of Winters's tunic. The red fabric bunched between her fingers, centuries of tradition crumpled in her grip. A collective gasp rose from the witnesses as she yanked downward, attempting to force the guard to acknowledge her. Winters shifted his weight almost imperceptibly, not enough to break position, but enough to maintain his balance against the unexpected assault. His eyes remained forward, his discipline holding against what was now unmistakably a physical attack. "This is assault," Davies called out sharply, closing the distance. "Ma'am, you need to step back immediately." But Patricia was beyond reason, beyond social constraints, beyond anything but the fury of someone unaccustomed to being ignored. "You will respond to me," she hissed, her face contorted with rage. And then, in a movement that seemed to shock even her hands flew up toward Winter's neck. Her fingers closed around his throat, manicured nails digging into the skin above his collar. The attack was clumsy, born more of blind rage than any real intent to harm, but it crossed a line that no amount of tradition or ceremony could ignore. Winter's eyes flickered, the first real movement he'd made, as Patricia attempted to tighten her grip. "How dare you stand there like you're made of stone?" she spat, her voice strangled with effort as she tried to maintain her grip on his neck. "I'll make you pay attention. I'll make you respond." The crowd erupted in shocked exclamations. A woman screamed. Someone shouted for security. Davies lunged forward, his police training kicking in automatically, but he was still several steps away when Winters finally moved. For those watching, it was like seeing a statue come to life. Not with the jerky uncertainty of fiction, but with the fluid confidence of extensive combat training. One moment, Winters was the perfect image of ceremonial stillness. The next, his free hand had moved with precision born of years of close-quarters combat drills. Patricia's eyes widened in shock as her attack was neutralized before it had truly begun, her moment of imagined power evaporating like morning mist under the summer sun. The guard she had dismissed as decoration was suddenly, undeniably, a soldier. Winters' movement was economical, precise and controlled. Exactly what one would expect from a decorated combat veteran. His left hand came up in a textbook defensive maneuver, breaking Patricia's grip on his throat, without applying excessive force. In the same fluid motion, his right hand maintained perfect control of his ceremonial weapon, never once compromising its position or using it as part of his defense. Their positions were reversed so quickly that many onlookers barely registered how it happened. Patricia found herself immobilized, not by brutal force, but by technical expertise. Her wrist caught in Winters' grip at precisely the angle that prevented further aggression without causing injury. The hold wasn't painful, merely restraining, the perfect embodiment of professional restraint in the face of unprovoked attack. "Ma'am," Winters spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had commanded men in far more dangerous situations. "You will step back now." The sound of his voice, calm, measured, entirely at odds with Patricia's shrieking rage, seemed to stun the crowd into silence. Even Patricia herself froze momentarily, her expression flashing from anger to surprise to indignation in rapid succession. You can't touch me," she sputtered, trying to pull her arm free and finding herself unable to break the guard's perfect control. "Do you know who I am? I'll have your job for this." "What you have done," Winters continued in the same even tone, "is assault a member of Her Majesty's Armed Forces while on duty. This is a criminal offence." Each word was delivered with perfect clarity, neither rushed nor emphasized, simply stated as unequivocal fact. "Security has been called. You will remain where you are until they arrive." Davies had reached them now, his experienced eye assessing Winters' hold with professional approval. "Well handled, Sergeant," he said quietly, showing his retired warrant card with his free hand. "Former Met Police Inspector Davies. Happy to provide a witness statement when needed." Winters acknowledged him with the slightest nod, his attention never fully leaving Patricia, who had begun to realize the seriousness of her situation. The crowd had formed a perfect circle around them, their expressions a mixture of shock, disapproval, and, increasingly, respect for the guard's controlled response. "This uniform," Winters continued, addressing Patricia but allowing his voice to carry to the assembled witnesses, "represents more than ceremony. Every man and woman who wears it has earned the right through years of service and training. We stand guard here, not as decorations, but as soldiers continuing a tradition of service that stretches back centuries." Patricia attempted to interrupt, but Winters continued with the same measured tone, neither raising his voice nor allowing her to derail his explanation. "The rifle I carry has been modified for ceremonial use, but it is a functional weapon. The training I've received includes how to neutralize threats without excessive force, which is what you're experiencing now." Her face flushed with angry embarrassment. Patricia tried once more to free herself. "You're hurting me. Everyone can see you're hurting me." Davies shook his head, addressing the crowd. "As a retired police officer with 30 years of experience, I can confirm that the sergeant is using minimal necessary force. The hold he's applying is a standard restraint technique designed specifically to prevent injury. Winters had maintained perfect control throughout, his hold neither tightening nor loosening despite Patricia's continued struggles. "Before I took this post," he continued, "I served 2 tours in Afghanistan. The men and women who stand guard at royal residences are active duty soldiers who rotate between ceremonial duties and operational deployments. We're not actors, ma'am. We're not decorations." For the first time, a flash of uncertainty crossed Patricia's face as the reality of her situation began to sink in. The statue she had attempted to bully had turned out to be a highly trained military professional who had responded to her assault with measured restraint rather than reactive force. "The men I served with in Helmand Province," Winters continued, his voice taking on a subtle depth that caught the attention of every listener, "understood the values this uniform represents. Discipline, duty, respect. The same values that prevent me from using more force than necessary, even when someone attempts to choke me while I'm performing my duties." 2 uniformed security personnel were pushing through the crowd now, their radios crackling with updates. Winters acknowledged their approach with a slight nod, but continued addressing Patricia, whose struggles had finally ceased as the weight of consequences began to settle on her. "You asked what makes us special," he said, his eyes meeting hers directly for the first time. "It's not the uniform. It's not the ceremony. It's the understanding that we stand for something larger than ourselves, the same principles that ensure your right to visit these grounds safely, to voice your opinions freely, even to make the serious error in judgment that you've made today." As security reached them, Winters smoothly transferred control of Patricia to their custody, his movements so fluid that the transition appeared almost choreographed. He stepped back, resuming his ceremonial position with such precision that it seemed he had never moved at all, save for the slight redness around his collar where Patricia's fingers had briefly dug into his skin. "This woman attempted to choke me while I was on duty," he reported to the security officers, his voice returning to the clipped professional cadence of military communication. "Former Inspector Davies can provide a witness statement, as can numerous other visitors." Davies stepped forward, his posture automatically straightening in the presence of official authority. The sergeant showed remarkable restraint in his response, he confirmed. Textbook handling of the situation. Throughout it all, Winters' dignity remained intact, the ceremonial uniform unwrinkled despite Patricia's assault, his bearing returning to the perfect posture expected of the Queen's Guard. The contrast between his composed professionalism and Patricia's dishevelled, flustered state couldn't have been more stark. "This is absurd." Patricia's voice had lost its commanding edge, taking on the defensive whine of someone beginning to realise they've made a catastrophic error. "He attacked me. I was just asking for directions, and he grabbed me." The security officers exchanged glances, clearly unimpressed by her version of events. "Ma'am, we have multiple witnesses, including a retired police inspector," the senior officer replied calmly. "Castle security cameras will have recorded the entire incident." Around them, several tourists had already stepped forward, offering their accounts to the second security officer. "She grabbed his throat," a German visitor explained, his English careful but clear. "He only defended himself, very professional." Patricia's gaze darted around the courtyard, searching for sympathy and finding none. The crowd that had witnessed her assault now watched her consequences unfold with the silent judgment of a jury that had already reached its verdict. Children peered around their parents' legs, wide-eyed at the real-life lesson in actions and consequences playing out before them. "You don't understand," Patricia tried again, her voice cracking slightly. "These guards are public servants. They're supposed to help visitors. I was just trying to get his attention." Davies stepped closer, his voice carrying the weight of 3 decades of law enforcement experience. "Attempting to choke someone is not getting their attention, ma'am. It's assault." In my professional opinion, Sergeant Winters showed exceptional restraint in his response. 2 uniformed police officers had arrived now, summoned by castle security. As they approached, Patricia's face drained of colour, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. This wasn't going to be resolved with a complaint to management or an angry review. This was entering the realm of criminal charges. Patricia Holloway, the female officer began, after conferring briefly with security. You are being detained on suspicion of assaulting a member of the armed forces in the execution of their duty. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. As Patricia was led away, her previous bravado completely evaporated. Winters remained at his post. His return to ceremonial stillness wasn't an act of theatre, but a demonstration of the discipline that Patricia had so fatally misinterpreted as weakness. The only visible sign of the confrontation was the slight redness at his throat, already fading in the late afternoon sun. The crowd lingered a moment longer, their perception of the guards forever altered by what they had witnessed. Many of them now looked at Winters with newfound respect, understanding that beneath the ceremonial uniform stood a professional soldier whose discipline extended far beyond the ability to stand motionless for hours. A family approached the edge of the permitted area, maintaining a respectful distance. The father, a former military man judging by his bearing, offered a subtle nod of appreciation that Winters acknowledged with the slightest change in his eyes, a moment of silent communication between those who understood the true meaning of service. Davies paused before leaving, watching as Winters resumed his watch with undiminished vigilance. The afternoon sun caught the brass buttons of his uniform, no longer a costume in the eyes of those who had witnessed his response, but the symbol of something timeless and essential, discipline in service of something greater than oneself. I served 30 years enforcing the law, Davies remarked to a nearby American couple who had witnessed the entire incident, and I've rarely seen such perfect control under provocation. Remember this, the next time someone dismisses these guards as ceremonial, they're soldiers first, always. The couple nodded thoughtfully, the husband's camera lowered respectfully to his side rather than raised for a photo. Some moments deserve to be remembered rather than captured, some lessons better absorbed than recorded. As the day's shadows lengthened across the ancient cobblestones, Winters maintained his post with the same perfect composure he had shown before Patricia's assault. To newly arriving visitors, he appeared to be exactly what Patricia had mockingly called him, a living statue, a ceremonial figure, a tourist attraction. But to those who had witnessed his response, he represented something far more profound. The visible embodiment of discipline, tempered by restraint, of power governed by principle, of tradition alive with purpose. What we witnessed today in that Windsor Castle courtyard was more than just an entitled woman learning a harsh lesson about respect. It was a powerful reminder of what these ceremonial guards truly represent. Not decorative figures, standing still for tourist photographs, but trained professionals embodying centuries of tradition, service, and disciplined restraint. In a world where immediate gratification often trumps patience, where contempt for tradition is sometimes mistaken for progress, the quiet dignity of these guards stands as a counterbalance, a living reminder that some values transcend time and fashion. Sergeant Winters' response to Patricia's assault demonstrated something profound about true strength. It doesn't need to roar to be powerful. It doesn't need to dominate to be effective. What would you have done in Sergeant Winters' position? When faced with provocation, would you have maintained such perfect restraint, responding only when absolutely necessary, and even then with measured control? It's worth considering how much stronger our communities might be if we all approached conflict with similar discipline. And perhaps more importantly, how do we teach respect for institutions and traditions in today's world? Is it through punishment when lines are crossed? Or through better education about why these traditions matter in the first place? If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might appreciate this reminder of what discipline and duty truly look like. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that go beyond the surface of these ceremonial traditions. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. Do check out the recommended videos appearing on your screen now, and we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time with another brand new video.